4 years ago, we looked at the Mark IV version of the MOTU UltraLite interface and absolutely loved it. Now we've got the Mark V here to check out, and I'm hoping it's just as good. A lot has changed in the last 4 years, but Apple's M1 chip release in 2020 and subsequent operating system updates have made a bit of a mess of hardware compatibility once again for professional Mac users. It's nice to finally get this interface though. It's specifically designed by MOTU to work with Apple's latest products, and that's great. It's also good to see MOTU adding loopback support on a professional quality interface, something that I think other manufacturers really need to do quickly to stay relevant in the future. Especially if you're marketing your small interfaces to individual musicians or home studio buyers or students these days, they are all live streaming. Whether they're live streaming their actual music performances or doing other work, whether they're gaming, communicating, or just existing, small interface users need more routing options, and that starts with at least one loopback path. So let's have a look at the rest of the features. Included in the box is a small universal power supply. This unit can operate from 12 to 18 volts DC and only draws 1 amp max. So while this is not bus powered by the USB-C connection, unfortunately, it would be very easy to battery power this for location work using a different power source. They include some international adapters for the power supply, and also both USB-C to C and USB-C to A cables for connecting to your computer. Now, you might see some comments and questions in the reviews of these online where folks are talking about using better quality USB cables or buying expensive USB-C Thunderbolt cables to be sure that they are getting the most out of this interface. To be clear, this is a USB 2.0 class compliant audio interface. The supplied cables work just fine, and there are no audio or feature advantages to using USB-C instead of a USB-A port on your host computer with this device. Without drivers, it will work as a class-compliant plug-and-play interface on a Mac or iOS. There is an optional driver for Mac that makes an ultra-low latency mode available, clocking only 2.4 milliseconds round-trip latency at 96 kHz. That's the same round-trip latency you'll get using the required driver with a Windows machine. To access most of the settings and controls, you'll probably want to use the new QMix 5 app that's available for both Windows, Mac, and iOS, and we'll jump into that in just a little bit. As an interface, we have a maximum of 18 inputs and 22 outputs at the base sample rates. That breaks down as 2 XLR tip-ring sleeve combo jacks on the front, and each of those can accommodate microphone, instrument, or line level, and both have phantom power as well as a pad available to switch in or out. Headed around to the backside, we have 6 more balanced 1/4-inch tip-ring sleeve line level inputs, 8 channels of optical inputs, or 2 if you want to put it into toslink mode. And finally, we have 2 channels of SPDIF on RCA. Output-wise, we have the stereo SPDIF pair again, as well as the 8 or 2 channels of optical. For 1/4-inch connections, though, we get 10 DC-coupled balanced tip-ring sleeve outputs. There is, of course, a dedicated headphone output around the front, and that gets its own controls and is a typical clean, loud Mark of the Unicorn headphone amplifier. The final I/O includes traditional full-size MIDI connections for both in and out, and that makes interfacing MIDI gear of any vintage very simple. So I have been using this interface pretty much all day, every day for about a week now, and I am very happy to have it. I didn't buy this one to make a review, and this will be my primary interface at this editing workstation going forward. It was purchased at full price just like you would, and there were no discounts or loaners or demo models or anything like that. I really did just buy this one because it was the right tool for what I'm doing. If you're going to get one of these, QMix5 is probably how you're going to interact with it mostly. Now, I'm super familiar with past QMix versions because I spent a lot of years with an 896 Mark III as an expansion unit for a Yamaha O1V96 V2. Compared to that, this version of QMix is pretty good. You get very usable EQ, gates, and compression on the input channels. You don't get those on any of the digital channels, unfortunately. But you can send those 8 physical inputs to your computer either pre or post processing, and that is extremely useful for working online. I wish they were able to include the audio tools in this version of QMix. I honestly use them a ton with the 896, but maybe that's a limitation of this hardware and the onboard DSP. That is understandable though, the 896 costs quite a bit more than this. But what does need addressing, though, in my opinion, are that on iOS, the QMix app has an IP connect option, and so far that seems to be non-functional. The only way to connect iOS to this unit is to be plugged in and to be using this unit as an interface for the iOS device. You can't so far log on to this from an iOS device just on your network and control it while it's acting as an interface for your computer. The IP address shown in the hardware menu is also not updating or receiving DHCP, so it's hard to know if or when that feature will be working. Finally, a small quirk in the UI that could cause some issues: when you double-click on the main volume control in the software, it sets that main output all the way up to 0 dB or unity, and that could be quite a surprise in certain situations. Personally, when I first tried it, I was expecting it to mute the send. I had an oscillator going, and boy, that was loud. This behavior is not repeated on the headphone output, and if you go over to the input side, double-clicking on those inputs does mute the input. So I'm not sure what that is about, or if that's intentional or just something they missed, but it certainly caught me off guard. For controls, the power on and off is a long hold on the main volume knob, and once you're powered on, pressing this button again toggles between it operating the main volume and the headphone volume controls. Some of MOTU's other units, again, that 896, when you tap the main volume control, it mutes it, and that was really, really useful. I use that all the time, and it would be great to see them add that as an option that you could select. Usually, when I'm going to the headphones, I want to turn off the studio monitors as well for that brief period of time, and it would be nice to have that as an option to do all at once. I don't want to drag this on too much longer because, like I said, I've only had it about a week. I'm going to continue to use this one, and then down the line a little ways, I will do a little more in-depth video. If you've got any questions in the meantime about this unit, definitely leave them down below. Or if there's anything you'd like to see tested or demonstrated, of course, I'd be happy to try to do that if it's possible. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're not already, or join the channel here for as little as $1 a month. I'll see you in the next one.